Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dager, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Dan Rome. Dan is the author of the international bestseller, The Back of the Napkin, and a host of other books. He teaches you how to use drawing effectively in business. Dan is also the founder of the Napkin Academy, the world's first online visual thinking training program, and the reason we're here today is a discussion about his new book, Draw to Win. Dan, thanks for joining me.
Hey, good morning, Joe. It is a pleasure to be with you.
And there's space on the wall back there. You must believe in a little bit of white space, huh?
Oh, I do. Well, you're looking at some of this is actually my workspace here. You're in my office right now, and these are some of the drawings and some of the charts and things that I've been putting together for a big client project right now. So I really do practice what I preach. I really do believe that visual communication is the best way to communicate an idea. In fact, it's interesting, Joe, because I think visuals, using our eyes, using our understanding of how vision actually works, and then using that to help us draw very, very simple pictures is not only a good way to communicate. As far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much the only way to really effectively communicate. And then when you complement your pictures with words, then you're hitting on all cylinders and amazing things can happen in terms of discovering new ideas, clarifying those ideas, sharing those ideas with other people, and just moving the ball forward from a visual perspective. It really works.
Well, I always know we have the right match when a publicist shouts out to me and says, and asks me if I want to interview this person, and my answer back to him is, I've already read the book. I got it last night at midnight, okay? It's what I read at breakfast today, okay? And I got to say that I enjoyed it. I've already read it, I mean, cover to cover, I think twice, and I got the pleasure of actually reading it and reviewing it last night again, okay, when I knew I was doing this
fantastic.
podcast. I think it's another hit to your collection.
I would agree. In fact, I think, it's I'm going to show it right here. Here it is. It's called Draw to Win. And what I really love about this book, now this is the 5th book that I've written. And, it's kind of like saying, well, which of your 5 children do you love the most? I mean, you're not allowed to answer that question, right? But the fact is, my other book's not listening right now. I have to say, perhaps this is the one that's the nearest to me right now, but it is my favorite. And I'll tell you why, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I really, really tried to keep the book thin. I tried to keep it very, very short. And the idea here is, Joe, I see on the bookshelf behind you, you're an avid reader. I'm an avid reader, or I try to be. In reality, it's very difficult to get through most business books these days, not because they're not good, not because they don't have good ideas in them, but because in reality, all of us are so time constrained that I think the way most people probably read a business book is you buy it, you get excited, you read the first third, you skim the remaining 2/3, put it on the shelf and say, yep, what's next? I didn't want that to happen. And I've learned my lesson. I've written medium length books, I've written long books, and I thought in this one, I want to make a short book. And that doesn't mean that it was easier to write. It actually means it was a lot harder to write, because what I've tried to achieve in Draw to Win, I think, is something very simple. It's been 10 years since The Back of the Napkin, my first book, came out. And in those 10 years, I counted the other day, I think I've done something like 720 different presentations to 130 different organizations and clients and businesses. And I realized that in that time, I've also probably drawn another 10,000 pictures. And I'll show you your viewers some examples of some of the pictures that I'm talking about here in a moment. But what I realized is, my gosh, at the end of this cycle of these 10 years, what have I really, truly learned? If you want to be more visual in your business, and I believe wholeheartedly that you have to be, if you want to take this visual path, these are the 10 commandments that I have learned. These are the 10 things that you really, really need to pay attention to. None of them are complicated. None of them are particularly hard. All of them, I think, are kind of intriguing and quite new. All of them are based on the neuromechanics and neuroscience of vision. And it's quite powerful. And what I tried to do is distill them down into the shortest, most punchy way with as many visuals as possible so someone could pick up the book, read it quickly, and get it. Does that make sense?
Oh, it perfectly does, because I was thinking of how can I use this and how can I use it in a sales call. And I used to sell construction equipment, okay?
Yeah.
Big stuff, all right?
Yeah.
And process equipment. And the sales calls that I remember so vividly, and my best sales calls, are the things that I got the opportunity to draw things out. I reflected on that, And I can only imagine that's the same for a customer, is it not?
Oh, it absolutely is. And here, just let's put our money where our mouth is. I've got my high tech visual communication tools right here. That would be a stack of paper, and my favorite. This is a Sharpie. Now I've got the big Sharpie. You sold construction equipment. This is the construction equipment Sharpie. This isn't some little one. This is the real deal. And here's what I'm talking about. And I assume, Joe, that you're talking about the same thing. So I'm going to say, this is me over here, and this is my client over here. And maybe there's a competitor over here that's moving in here, and I'm trying to increase this. And I know that there's a way that my client can increase their sales by doing some particular things. But what I'm worried about is this competitor moving in. So what I want to do is build some kind of a marketing wall to block that competitor out. Now, I'm just making this up as I go, but that is the kind of picture that I'm talking about. It is exceedingly simple. It's nothing but some circles, maybe a box, maybe a couple of arrows. And what you can do by just learning some really basic drawing tools in doing this kind of approach is you and I are no longer just talking. And let's try it like this. Hey, Joe, there's your business. There's your client. There's your competitor. What you need to do is build a wall. Okay, let me just show you. All of a sudden, things become clear. Now, I don't know. They could become clear to me. Does that make sense? What I'm sketching out there? That's my process. Do you think it makes any sense?
Oh, certainly it makes sense because, I've already put whatever you put in that blocking side there. I'm going to actually kind of remember it. Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, that's going to definitely, make me jump at what we're talking about here.
Well, here, Joe, can I for 1 second go on with one more little data point, one more picture to draw? And this is going to be a simple one. Do you mind if I do one more?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, and this to me, I'm actually going to draw two data points here in a second. And these are the two data points that seal the deal as far as I'm concerned, why you must be visual. Even though most of us who went to school, have experience in business, have never been taught to draw pictures. Here's why that we need to. So the first picture I'm going to draw is a real simple one. I'm going to draw another one of my favorite circles, start a lot of pictures this way, and say that this circle represents the human brain, all of the neurons that we have in our brain. That's what I'm drawing out right here. I want you to cut that about in half. It's estimated that roughly half of our entire brain is there to help us process vision. More of our brain is there to process vision than any other thing that we do. And, this is auditory processing over here. Here's, smell, here's taste, and here's memory and all these other cognitive processes. More of our brain is dedicated to processing vision than any other thing that we do. If you want someone to pay attention to what you're doing, simply draw for them. And it doesn't need to be an extraordinarily powerful drawing. The second data point is, let me go ahead and pull up one more sheet here and show you what can be explained with nothing more complicated than a stick figure. All right, so I'm just going to draw a little person here and say this is the average human adult. Okay, there we have it. Of all of the organs in our body, we've got our heart, we've got our kidneys, we've got our liver, we've got our stomach, we've got our lungs, we've got all these organs in our body. We've got a little organ in here called our brain. Our brain accounts for about 2% of our total body weight. So if we weigh in here at 200 pounds, about 2% of that is the weight of the human brain. Okay, but think about this. This little organ in here, encased in our skull, very well protected, consumes more energy than all the other organs in our body combined. In fact, our brain, even though it only accounts for 2% of our body weight, accounts for about 20% of our total energy burn at any time. More of the calories that we're burning are going into supporting our brain than anything else that we do. And if we combine it with our previous picture, more of our brain is dedicated to vision than anything else we do. If you put these two together, Joe, what does this tell you? Vision is pretty darn important to us as people. More of our calories spent are on helping us literally see the world than any other thing that we do. And all I'm trying to advocate is, wouldn't it be silly to not take advantage of this superpower of vision that all of us have? Wouldn't it be silly not to use it? And isn't it really silly when you think in business and in politics and in organizational development and in all these areas of study, pictures are not a focus? We're crazy. We're absolutely crazy not to use our simple little drawings. Now I'm going to get off my soapbox and just turn it back to you and say, that's my story, and I am sticking with it.
Oh, it's great. But as you're talking there, I'm sitting there thinking is that, I had this little art class once a week for an hour, okay? On
Yeah,
Friday afternoon when they couldn't teach me anything else, right?
right.
And that's what happened to me in school. But it seems like it's so obvious to pull that up. Is school changed? I mean, I'm an old guy. Is school changed? Is there's more visual and we're spending a lot more time
Oh,
in that
it's
area
well,
now?
it's a real split. I often people ask me, Dan, now that the books have been successful and I've got a kind of a name in the business community and I'm doing great projects and on the road and speaking and those kind of wonderful things, people often ask me, so Dan, what's next? You've achieved some of those goals. What's next? Well, the answer, Joe, to what you're saying is education. I think I have two daughters. One is in elementary school and one is in high school right now. So I've paid a lot of attention to how education works these days. And I think their teachers are magnificent. I think it is a shame, though. I think it is a shame that we don't emphasize the visual more in learning. And I think the simple answer to the question in sort of standard education, sort of the standard curriculum, no, pictures sadly are going bye-bye. You can't test for pictures. They don't fit well into the sort of the standards of the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, kind of the basics. No room for art, no room for visuals. Let's go straight to math and reading. Okay, great. Well, but that's terrible because what we're doing is we're missing this entire cognitive engine that we have that makes things clear. And the example that I love to give for it is that imagine any kid who's kindergarten age or younger. What is the one way they have to record their thoughts? And what is the one way that every single little kid does record their thoughts? Well, I will show you what that way is. Every one of us, when we were children, did this. We say, this is me, and here's my mom, and here's my dad, and here's our house, and here's the sun, and here's the dog. And we did that all the time, and we drew all the time. And that was the way we recorded our thoughts and communicated them because we didn't yet know how to read and write. Well, awesome. Then comes along, we go into first, second grade, we start to learn the ABCs, we start to learn spelling, it ramps up, we get this whole incredible structure of tools over the next several years. We get grammar, we get syntax. Hopefully many of us have a chance to learn a second language. We've got all these incredible verbal communication skills that we've learned, but we don't have any structure to support what we innately want to do to communicate. And in fact, I think the real shame of it is for most kids in school, the moment that you can read, the teacher comes and says, okay, don't use the pictures anymore. You don't need them. Those pictures were great training wheels to get you to be able to read. Crazy. No, pictures are not training wheels. Pictures are the full bicycle. Words are a great way to communicate, but words by definition are linear. If I'm going to tell you a story, I have to start here and start at point A and talk to point B to then talk to C, then to D, then to E. I mean, Joe, to be fair, what's the likelihood you even remembered where this conversation started? We're all the way over here at point H, and we're supposed to remember what A, B, and C were? Think about the amount of cognitive cycles that you are burning when someone is talking, like I'm doing right now, simply trying to remember where did this conversation begin? That does not happen when we show the picture. We don't have to remember anything. It's all right here. We can now use those cognitive cycles to actually analyze what's going on in here. This is the real problem. The other thing is that the problems we face today, and I know you know this from your experience in sales, the problems that we face today, and this may have always been true, they're not linear. You don't solve a really complex construction problem. You don't solve a really complex business strategy problem by writing 4 paragraphs. No, because these problems are multi-layered. There are multiple pieces that are going on. Problems are not an A, B, C, D thing. Problems are things that are stacked up on top of each other. There's matrices moving across them. You have one thing that impacts another one, which impacts another one, and the whole thing tips like this because of this other weight of some other element sitting on it. Talking is beautiful. Writing is beautiful, but writing is not going to solve a multidimensional, multifaceted problem. It will take one slice and fix that. Pictures, however, are the way that we can begin to map in to say, and let me go ahead and visualize this just a little bit.
Well, I have to admit, Dan, you're not very passionate about your subject.
No, you don't think so? Joe, the fact is, there are many facts. One of the facts is I am passionate about this because I know with 100% conviction that using pictures to clarify your own thinking and then using those pictures to communicate that thinking to someone else, when combined with words, is the most powerful mind meld communication tool ever. Nothing supersedes combining the visual with the verbal. We're good with the verbal. We have no experience, no tools, very little training on the visual. And that's what my soapbox is all about. And you better believe I love it, because I know that, to the degree I've had any success, and I've had some, it's because I'm the guy who draws the pictures. I have a little rule. I forget which one of the 10 commandments is, but it's probably commandment number 2, number 3. Whoever draws the best picture wins.
It's true.
And what I mean by that is we don't see this very often in the business world, people drawing pictures. But when we do, when you are the person in the meeting who has the guts to go up to the whiteboard or the flip chart and do what I was doing a moment ago and say, wait a minute, folks, if I understand correctly, this is us over here, and here's the problem over here, and here's where we need to go. Did I get it right? If you're the one who draws the picture, you're the one who's going to get everybody's attention. And if you can make that picture clear enough to where in general people agree and can share what they're seeing, you've won. You will be the person who wins the argument. You will be the person who wins the contract. You will be the person who wins the funding, for the simple reason the human mind, more than anything else, for the data points we talked about before, is triggered by pictures. And when we see something that we believe and it makes sense to us, it lights up our brain for the reasons we saw a moment ago in ways that nothing else can do. If you want to win, that's why I called the book Draw to Win. If you want to win, be the person who creates the picture. You're going to win. And it is as simple as that.
Well, and it's so simple to start out, you say, is just to draw a circle, the same way we started this conversation, right?
Certainly. Yeah. Many people are going to say, okay, and I thought, Joe, a moment ago, this is where you were going to go when you were talking about your experience back in school. I would say when I go into a business meeting, my experience would be that probably half the people in the room say, Dan, this sounds good, but I'm not visual. I can't draw. I'll listen to you, but I'm not going to do it. The other half are like, yeah, this is cool. I've always drawn. Nobody ever told me it was okay. I'll do more of it. Great. But half the room is, I would say at best, maybe a little bit, they're not cynical because people are always intrigued by the idea, but a little bit nervous and saying, I can't do this because I'm not visual. You are visual. Everybody is visual. Think about how your eyes guide you through the day. You wake up in the morning and you open your eyes and you see the sun is out, and you wake up, you get out of bed and you put your clothes on or whatever your morning routine is. Half the time your brain is still turned off. You're not even awake yet. What is keeping you alive? What is helping you make those decisions and knowing what to do? Your eyes. Your sense of vision is at work. It is a miracle that it works at all. And it is fantastic how effective vision is. It is our lifesaver and it is our superpower. It's guiding us through the day all the time. You're driving a car, you're thinking about these other things, your eyes are scanning and making all these decisions and helping you react. Yeah, sometimes your vision system is off a little bit, but what's amazing is not how infrequently it doesn't work well, but how frequently, how often, and how unconsciously vision powers us through. All I'm trying to do is say, imagine what could happen if we could tap into that power in an intentional way. And this is the real genesis of my work is, wouldn't it be interesting, Joe, wouldn't it be cool if we could know enough about mechanically, neuromechanically, how vision works? How does our brain turn light in the form of photons into meaning in our head thousands of times a second, billions of photons of light? How does that even happen? That's crazy. And the fact that our vision system does that in less than a tenth of a second is even crazier. That's where those calories are going, by the way, to keep that visual engine churning and running all the time.
And what's really interesting is just because of this conversation, okay, more so than anything else, is that when you explain that, automatically what popped in my mind was this eyeball with this funnel behind it and some dots going back, and I'm, and I, all at once, I'm capturing what you're saying visually, because I'm processing that, and it's like I'm going to put a little work in that triangle, and it
You
makes,
got it.
yeah.
Here's light coming in. Interesting little side note, Joe. I'm just going to run with this. Let's say this is the eye. So here's a person. Let's draw their, the person's looking this way. Okay, here's the eyeball. The back of the eye, obviously, is the retina. And the retina is where the rods and cones are, the primary means of detecting these photons of light that are coming in. Well, here's an interesting thought. The retina is actually, even though it's in the back of the eye, is actually part of the brain. These are some special neurons that have extruded their way out and are sitting on the back of our eye. So there is actually a lot of initial visual triage, if you will, kind of visual, right up front, brute force visual processing that's literally taking place at the retina, long before things go through the optic nerve. This is the optic nerve, and into like the visual neocortex and things like that. There's a whole bunch of processing that's taking place. Your brain has pushed itself right out to sit at the back of the eye. And what's kind of interesting about this is, actually, let's go with this diagram just a little bit more. So this is the neocortex. So when you think about the human brain and you think about the folded gray matter, you're thinking about the neocortex. All mammals have a neocortex. It's just that in most mammals, it's much smaller. In humans, it's enormous. And then that surrounds something that's called kind of the limbic brain, our amygdala. It seems like a lot of fight and flight, a lot of where emotional processing is done. And that's sitting on the brain stem. So this is our spinal cord here. So this is our reptilian brain. Are you able to see my picture okay?
Yes, we're seeing it great.
Okay, so this is the brain stem. This is the back of our spinal column. This is the reptilian brain, ancient part of our visual of our brain, millions and millions of years old. And then around that again, the limbic brain, and then the neocortex. So there is actually back here, the visual neocortex, where a lot of the brute force, big picture processing of vision is taking place. But what's kind of cool is one of the things that these retinas do, or the rods and cones at the retina, the actual processing that's taking place at the retinal level, is a lot of the visual signal. In fact, about 10% of the visual signal, about 10%, is shunted off, never makes it into the major visual processing centers, goes straight into the reptilian brain. And there's a name for that. It is called the Ware pathway. And what it is it's the part of our visual system that detects our proximity to other objects. So right now, I'm looking at this piece of paper, and my brain is detecting, is this thing near to me? Do I need to worry about it? Or is it far away? Maybe I don't need to worry about it so much. A lot of that processing is actually taking place down here in our reptilian brain. Now, the reason why that's important is we might talk a little bit later about something I call the 6x6 set of 6 pictures that we can draw to help us clarify what's going on in the world around us. One of those is going to be a map. When I talk about a map, the reason we might draw a map is it's the picture that we draw, as simple as it might be, a little X, Y, you're here and I'm here, something like that, or and the big boogeyman's over here, or whatever. The map is simply the picture that we're drawing to capture this model that much of our reptilian brain is building about the space around us. Very ancient thing. We have this in common with crocodiles. Crocodiles are never going to learn the ABCs, never going to, because they don't have a neocortex to enable them to have the sort of the memory capacity for that sort of even brute force thinking. But what crocodiles like us are really good at is being able to detect their position relative to something else. And that's taking place, a lot of it down here in the reptilian brain. So that's just details, but I think it's all kind of cool stuff that adds up into, if we understand how this system works, we can hotwire it, we can hijack it. The thing that I find really cool, Joe, about all of this study, looking into the neuromechanics of vision, the visual neurosciences, get this, vision is predictable. Vision is 100% predictable. Really good movie directors, Steven Spielberg, I don't know, Alfred Hitchcock, know this. What we mean by this is your visual system has evolved to try to do the best job it can at understanding a very complex world as fast as possible. because that's what keeps us alive, keeps us moving, keeps us from literally getting our head taken off by the thing that's flying at us. Okay, that system is a process, just like walking. Walking is a process. And, pretty much everybody, with certain exceptions, pretty much everybody walks the same way. Mechanically, we walk the same way. Well, guess what? We all see the world. Most of us, we all see the world the same through the same process. Light comes in, it gets broken down into these discrete steps, these various visual pathways, each one of which feeds our brain a certain type of information. They all get stitched together at the end, and presto, we've got this live picture of the world to help us navigate through it. When I say vision is predictable, what that means is if I'm trying to share with you an idea, I know exactly what type of visual information your brain is looking for at what step in the process, at all steps in the process, which is a long-winded way of saying, when I want to show you something with a series of pictures, there are 6 pictures that I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw them in this sequence. There are other options, but this way always works to convey a complex idea to you, because all it's doing is mapping the pictures I give you to each step of your visual process. 100% predictability. I can guarantee which pictures your brain is going to want to see as I'm telling you a story. They're 6, they're simple, and it's cool. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, and what are the 6?
Okay, so I'm running out of blank paper here, so I'm going to draw on the back of one of my sheets. All right. So the best way to do this is to imagine, this is the picture I often like to draw. This is me over here. We talked earlier about the best way to start a picture is to just draw a circle. There you have it, and give it a little name. Let's call this me. Okay, so that's me, and now I'm going to draw a bigger circle over here. And can you see me okay? Can you see these drawings okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to call this one my problem. My problem. Okay, and now I see that I've got a challenge right here, because there's little old me out here, and I've got a big old problem over here. Well, there's no way I can fix that problem because it's too big. So here's what the visual system does, is it divides the problem up into 6 slices, kind of like a really big pizza. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tackle this problem by taking it apart visually, slice by slice. And we're going to start over here with the who and the what. And then we're going to move over here and we're going to analyze the how much. These are the numbers. Then we're going to move down here. We're going to analyze the where. Where's everything located? Then we're going to move in here to when. What's the sequence in which I'm seeing things happen? Then we're going to talk about the how. What is the cause and effect chain that I'm witnessing? And we're going to wrap it up with the why. What is the lesson that I've learned? So here are the 6 pictures. And we start here and we move in a clockwise direction. So I've got a particular problem. I don't know what this might be. We'll call it, I don't know, the weather. Could be anything. Let's talk about the weather. So what we're going to do is we're first going to start out by drawing our pictures of our who and our whats. And I'm going to say, okay, well, there's me. So this is what I call a little portrait. Me, and there's some clouds, and there's some sun, and there's some rain. Okay, so what I've just done is I've drawn a little portrait that identifies the characters that are taking place in my problem. I'm not putting any judgment on them. I'm just drawing them out. Then I say how much. Now I draw a chart. So the chart is, let's say that this is % chance of rain from 100% to 0%. And this is my week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today, 0% chance of rain. Tomorrow, it's going to rain 100%. Then on Sunday, it's going to rain 100%. So now I'm drawing a chart. Then I say, okay, where? Well, now I draw my little map. So here's my little map of the U.S. I'm out here in California. I believe, Joe, you're down there in Florida. Is that right?
No, I'm in Indiana.
Oh, you're in Indiana. Okay, I saw a Florida number. You're up here in Indy. Okay, so you're over here. So I'm going to say the map is rain clouds here. It's going to rain on me, not going to rain on you. So I've got a little map. When? Okay, now I draw a little timeline. And it simply says what's going to happen is first a few clouds are going to come. And then a lot of clouds are going to come. And there's going to be a bunch of rain. And so my flow chart then says, how does it work? Okay, so if I have a cloud and it combines with a certain temperature, I'm going to get rain. The rain will fall on me. I need to have an umbrella to protect myself from the rain. So, and then I come around. So the ultimate lesson I've learned, sort of the why, the sort of what I call a visual equation is I'd say, I am happier when I have an umbrella. So what I've done, those are the 6 pictures, by the way. You draw a little portrait, little stick figure, you draw a little chart, you draw a little map, a little timeline, a little flow chart, and a kind of a visual summary. and you just keep going around, and that's the way you explain a problem. And when you're doing sort of a visual pitch to someone, say back in your sales days, for example, and you want to explain to them why they might want to buy a particular piece of equipment, you'd map it out and you'd say, okay, here's the people and the objects that we need to work on. Here's some numbers, perhaps prices or effectiveness. Here's some maps that show the intersection of these things, and you work your way around these 6 pictures. You can explain anything to anybody by just drawing those.
And what's
Pretty
so
cool.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about that to me is that I always argue, because I'm a lean guy and I spend a lot of time in the lean area, okay? And one thing we use a lot of A3s, okay, is what they do, the Toyota things, and there's a lot of pictures. But we've kind of gotten a habit of putting too much information in them versus making them visual the way they were supposed to be. But everybody in the lean sales world, okay, wants to jump to the why, the 5 whys. And that's really way too premature in a sales journey. To do that is to jump to the why. And that story concept of portrait, chart, map, timeline, the flow chart, and the summary, the last step is the why, right?
Exactly. Well, okay, so you mentioned a couple of things that are interesting. I'm assuming that your followers all know what you mean when you talk about an A3.
Oh, yes. Oh,
yes. Okay, so I love A3. A lot of people that I come across who don't have a deep background in TPS, Toyota Production System, or Lean, have no clue what an A3 is. And what I love about an A3, for anybody who doesn't know, is it's just that's the European name, and also the Japanese name for what we call a tabloid sheet of paper. That's all an A3 is. 11 by 17 sheet of paper. Put that into centimeters. What's interesting about it is, Joe, I'm sure your followers probably know then, is that there isn't a fixed template, but an A3 works because what it says is you're going to combine everything I need to know about any idea into one sheet of paper. And it typically could be broken up into, maybe seven to 9 different quadrants. And one of them has to state the problem, and one of them should include a picture, and one of them says what would the solution look like, and what would we achieve, and how will we test it, etc. But the beauty of it is it's kind of like a bento box, if you've ever had a Japanese lunch, where each section, each little quadrant contains its one piece of the meal. And it's as you work your way through it, there's a linear, logical progression that takes you through the idea. And you're right, some of these hopefully are going to be a picture and they're visual. And I love the A3 because it gives us another framework and another structure, which is very visual. And I also love it for the reason you said. Simon Sinek, who is a friend of mine, has a book called Start With Why. He's been wildly successful book on leadership. And he's right. If you're trying to convince people as a leader, come with me, do this, it's really helpful if you can start people out by giving them the big why. Why are we doing this? What is our great objective? Is this to better humanity? Is this to make more money? Is this to make ourselves feel better? Is this to vanquish the foe? What is the why? I take a slightly different path because I'm usually hired as a problem solver, not so much as a leader, but as a problem solver. And usually when you're solving a problem, I find it does not work so well to start with why, because people immediately jump into the solution. And that's why I like to go start here and build sequentially a visual model of the problem so that by the time we get to the end, we all kind of see, oh, that's why we need this particular solution, because we worked the problem first. Now, here's the cool thing about this little diagram. You can start your storytelling at any point on this. You don't have to start here. I have found typically for problem solving and communications, this is the best place to start. It's like setting up the pieces on the chessboard. That to me is a logical place to start the game. First thing is put the pieces on the board. You don't automatically begin the chess game at the end. But if you want to, if your job is to sell immediately or to convince someone in 5 seconds or less, you could start here. You could say, this is why we're doing it. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is why we need umbrellas, because we want to stay protected from the rain. So everybody get an umbrella. Okay, now someone might say, well, is that really the right thing to do? Then you can say, okay, let's analyze the problem and work it through. Joe, am I making any sense? The idea that you could start it anywhere. I like to start here. And I think working it gets us to the why where everybody agrees on it. Does that make sense?
Because I think what you're saying is sometimes you have to, where you have to frame the problem, frame the picture, frame the conversation is where the people are
Yes.
presently at. Don't try to change their mind, okay? Try to go where they're at, and then if you have
Yeah,
that sequence in place, you can fill the story in.
that's right. I love it. Framing. Yes, you're absolutely right. How do you frame the story? How do you put yourself into the mindset of the person that you're trying to sell to? How do you have that sort of empathy squared, that real sense that I can't sell you a solution that I think is great unless I truly know what your problem is, have walked in your shoes, and show you that I know what your problem is. And the only, well, not the only way, but I think the best way to do that is let's work the problem together. There's a famous quote from Einstein, and among so many, Einstein most famously said, I probably actually said 1/3 of the things that are quoted to me, but I'll take credit for the rest. So one of those that, if you track it down, Einstein did actually say is he said, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes analyzing the problem and 5 minutes coming up with the solution. And this is why I like to go in this particular sequence, because I think what most of us do, we see a problem and we start solving it. And you know this, we're solving the wrong thing. We don't know what problem it is that we're trying to solve. I mean, in my little silly example here of the weather, we're trying to solve how do I keep out of the rain with an umbrella? Well, maybe the idea is just don't go outside. Fine. So until you've really thought through the problem, your time is maybe not being so well spent on the solution. And I like that in the visual problem solving approach.
What's the trick? When you started explaining it to me, I'm into frame of mind to think visually and things like I'm into conversation. You started playing the neocortex and going through the eyeball and things like that. And automatically that visual popped up in my mind. Okay.
Right.
And we're on the same page because you just about drew what I was thinking. Okay. And then you
Good.
took it a little bit deeper. I got a lot of things going on in my mind. Okay. Let's say when I'm in a sales call or when I'm in a business meeting stuff. And those visuals don't always pop up like that. I was in the frame of mind in this conversation. What helps me get there? I mean, how can I start thinking like Dan Rome? I mean, you think that way.
I love this question. Okay. So I think there are a couple answers here. The simplest one of all is when you go into a meeting, and this might seem absurd because it's so basic, bring your tools. Most of us go into a meeting and we say, I'm prepared, I've got it all in here, or I've got my PowerPoint, I'll present it, or I'll print it out and I'll dump it on the desk. And then we start talking. And that's good for a little while. We're doing some banter. We're setting the stage. For me, though, like I'm trying to do with you, I'm constantly listening for you to give me the picture that you're already seeing so I can start to draw it. So when you said, I see an eyeball and a funnel, okay, all I'm doing is riffing off of you now. You gave me that picture. I just captured it. Now, this takes a little bit of practice. It takes a little bit of time. But what I often think about is it's kind of like visual listening. I don't want to get too much into the theory here and craziness, but if you think about it, something like 80% of spoken language is metaphor, meaning we're always talking about kind of visual ideas or allegorical ideas. For example, and I don't want to go too far into this. It'll get academic here in a moment. I don't want to do that. But if you think about, I'm feeling up. The stock market is up. Pull yourself up. The sun is up. People are feeling up today. What are we describing with that word up? The sun is not actually up. The market isn't actually up. I'm not actually feeling up. Up is a vector. It's a direction. It's a thing. It's that. What spoken language does is it takes these sort of metaphors and makes us become aware of how to use them very often. So what I try to do is listen really carefully, kind of listen with my eyes. What is the what does the thing that you're describing to me with words look like? And the easiest way to start it, and this is what I do all the time, is you go into a meeting and you just listen and you say, okay, Mr. Miss Potential Client, can you just tell me a little bit about your company? To get started, just tell me a little bit about your business. And they're going to say, so I've got a construction company and we're active in 3 main areas. We build roads, we build bridges, we build garages. Okay, fair enough. And primarily what we do is we do that for the state, and we've got some private invest. So they're telling you. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, they've got a business, construction business, and she just told me they do 3 things. They build roads, they build garages, and they build bridges. So I just capture this. So this is your business, this is your company here, this is you, and you do 3 things. And you do that, you said, for the state. Okay, so you've got a customer out here who's the state. All right, fair enough. Let's just give someone a star. Why not? They represent government. Then you've got some private people over here too that you're building for too. So that's what I draw. That little thing right there is like magic, because what's happening now is my customer, for the first time probably in a long time, is seeing someone map out their business for them. And then, and all I've done here, by the way, this is the first picture in my little portrait. Joe, is this making any sense? The easiest way to start is just to listen to what someone's saying and try to visually capture it really quick, and that'll take a little practice, but it's not hard. And then you come back to them and say, okay, so your problem, you're telling me, as you listen a little bit further, is that your state client money is dropping. They're no longer funded. So what if you want to survive and keep doing these 3 things, what you're going to need to do is ramp up the business that you're offering to private companies. So how would we do that? And then you start to move into your flow chart. Is this making any sense? Is this answering your question?
Oh, I think it's perfect, because what I take from it is just from the process of making those sketches myself, it provides better clarity about the customer, and also it slows me down to put me in, and to understand him better. I that's what I like about it, is I'm not sitting there racing to think how I'm going to answer him. I'm actually, I'm actually getting in his problem, and that's why I always thought that I always accomplished a lot on a sales call when I moved to the same side of the table, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
I want to
those
run with that,
pictures
Joe.
are that.
I think you just nailed it. And we're talking sales now, and there are other processes and other ways that you might use pictures. But if we just focus on sales for a moment, I think from my perspective, you just nailed it. Sit on the same side of the table as your prospect. And, here's a great way to do this, whether you're literally sitting on the same side of the table or not. Be the person who pulls out the piece of paper and with a little practice says, I'm trying to capture what we're talking about. And it does slow it down. And it does show that you're a genius, because you're mapping out something that is not theoretical. Hopefully it's not very complicated. You're just capturing what the person is saying to you, and you're clarifying it in your own mind. And then what you do, and this is, I love your idea of sitting on the same side of the table. I then take the pen and I hand it to you. And I say, Joe, did I get this right? And you might say, well, actually, no. Let me have the pen there, because, I told you we build roads, but actually we really don't. We haven't done that in 10 years. So that's not exactly right. And in fact, what I think is interesting is, although money is dropping for the state, I really don't want to move in this direction. What I want to do is take advantage of the money that is available, because and I'm just making this up now, that if I can build up the bridge part of the business, that budget actually hasn't been cut yet. So the point I'm trying to make is, now you're having a true dialogue, problem solving with your prospect. You started the drawing, you drew 75% of it, and then you hand over the pen. And you do it in a non-threatening way. They've already seen you draw the picture. They already know it's okay. And I've seen, I would say 9.5 times out of 10, when you do that, the person says, well, I can't really draw. And you say, well, I'll do it for you then. What do you think? And they'll say, no, give me the pen. I'll mark it up.
Yeah. Well,
and now you've got the truth.
after I read your book back in
Yeah.
the napkin, I started the workshops I do. I started playing like a 2 3 minute TED video with Suni Brown talking about doodling, and I always had a
Oh yeah.
blank workbook sheet to start out. Okay, where with a couple faces and a couple figures on it that everybody had to doodle to get the workshop started. Okay,
There you
and
go.
and
Perfect.
and I said, okay, now, all right, is it's your responsibility to doodle the rest of the day through the workshop. Okay, that's the one thing
Perfect.
you have to do. And,
And how did people respond?
and they actually had fun. I actually had people draw doodles and stuff like that up on the whiteboard, in the first break and everything, and draw some pictures
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Is that they got into it, and I can't say that everybody did it. I had some stick in the muds there,
Yeah.
but
Well,
but
what
there,
I find, yeah, yeah.
but a lot of people did.
Well, and so I'm not happy. I'm not happy, Joe, when at the end of one of my work sessions, if everybody isn't up at the board drawing, then I'm not happy. I have not done my job. I don't want those stick in the muds, that percent of that percent that just, I'm not going to do it. This is childish. This is patronizing. This is not serious. This isn't what I'm here to do. I'm not happy unless I've got everybody up there doing this. So I tend to add another layer on top of what you're talking about, the kind of the doodling as a warm-up exercise. And the layer I add in is the process and the methodology. Use this 6x6 tool problem. So what I will do is I'll put on my serious face. Because heaven forbid in a serious business setting that anybody's having any fun. I mean, that would be the last thing we'd want to have happen. And I'm facetious because in fact what happens is everybody has a great time. Is walk them through the process and say, okay, there is a process. It's neuromechanically based. That's where this comes from. That's why this works. It's this set of steps. You can follow it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with me, step by step, let's work a problem. And we go through it. So they are doodling, and I would even call it, we're doing guided methodology-based doodling. If that sounds crazy, like a contradiction, it's actually not. Because what we're doing is that part of your mind that wants to be visual, you're now giving it a structure and a framework to work from so that it can be successful. Your visual mind can find its voice, if you will. Does that make any sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And you've done a wonderful job, okay, explaining things. And especially to my lean group of people, because I've always quoted this and used this for years, is that,
Great.
you're not lean if you're not visual. And
Yeah.
and that is, a perfect way to go. I thought Draw to Win was a great book for sales, for marketing, and even for the executive. We need to get those guys sketching, right? Even at this
Absolutely.
and that. So,
Well, Joe,
tell me where I can find the
yeah.
book, and and where's the best place to contact you, and just throw in and give me a plug about the Napkin Academy, okay? Because
Okay, so
I
the
wanna see
easiest
about
way to
that.
reach me is really simple. It's simply dan@danrome.com. If you can read that, dan@danrome.com. And that's my email address. danrome.com is the easiest place to find me online, and everything that we're talking about will be there. And the Napkin Academy, so napkinacademy.com, all one word. In fact, let me write it out right now so that people can see that. It is NAPKIN academy.com. That is, there you have it right there, napkinacademy.com. That is, as you mentioned earlier, my online visual thinking training school. I've started it almost 5 years ago now. We've had about 3,500 people who've become card-carrying members. I did an account once from 43 countries around the world. It's really great. It's a paid service. It's a subscription service. You pay a minimal fee every month. You pay me 19 bucks a month. And what you get for that is you have my entire set of all 5 books available in video lessons. The video lessons vary in length from 15 to 25, 30 minutes. Each lesson is me live drawing, taking you through one aspect of visual communication. There are many, many of those lessons available now. We have an active community. People have homework assignments. Once every 3 weeks to get together online, and we do a review of each other's work. I introduce a new lesson. It's really great. I really, really enjoy it. And our community it's a tight group of people that are exploring from different parts of the world and different businesses and industries how we can bring these tools to bear in what we do. I encourage people to take a look. I think you'll like it.
I think it's an exciting opportunity for people to take a look at the Napkin Academy, but I would first tell them to start winning by reading the book
Drawing to Win.
Okay.
Very good.
I would like to thank you very much, Dan, and I hold you in high regards and think you've done a great job, okay, through the last 10 years that I've followed you. So, privileged to have you as a guest.
Joe, thank you. It's been fun to be here.
This podcast will be available in Business 901 iTunes Store. Look for some YouTube excerpts on it. And, of course, the Business 901 blog site. So thanks, everyone, for listening.